This is the DEFCON Warning System. Alert status for 1 p.m. Universal Time Coordinated, Monday, the 9th of February 2026. Condition Blue DEFCON 4. There are currently no imminent nuclear threats at this time. However, there are events occurring in the world theater which require closer monitoring. In the first quarter of 2026, the global nuclear risk environment remains tense, shaped by the expiration of the last U.S. nuclear arms control agreement and renewed diplomatic friction over Iran's nuclear program. Although no state has signaled overt preparations for nuclear weapon use, structural drivers of risk have shifted. Nuclear arms control regimes that constrained the world's two largest arsenals for nearly 2 decades are no longer in force, and competing diplomatic and strategic pressures contribute to uncertainty in major capitals. We begin with the most consequential development of the period, the expiry of the New START treaty between the United States and Russia. On the 5th of February 2026, the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, the last binding nuclear arms control agreement between the United States and the Russian Federation, officially expired. This treaty had limited each side to 1,550 deployed strategic nuclear warheads and capped the number of delivery systems subject to verification mechanisms. New START, signed in 2010 and in force since 2011, was the cornerstone of U.S. nuclear risk reduction architecture for 15 years. It mandated limits on deployed strategic warheads and delivery systems, data exchanges, short-notice inspections, and predictability measures to reduce risk of misunderstanding and unintended escalation. However, Russia suspended participation in 2023, ceasing on-site inspections and data sharing. The treaty could only be extended once under its terms. It reached its final expiration on the 5th of February 2026. With the treaty now expired, no binding limits or verification regime constrains strategic weapons deployments of the two largest nuclear stockpiles for the first time since the early 1970s. The lapse of these limits is not merely procedural. It removes transparency measures that historically lowered worst-case assumptions and miscalculation risk between Washington and Moscow. In response, the United Nations Secretary-General described the lapse as a grave moment for international peace and security, urging rapid negotiations on a successor framework. Russia stated it intends to act responsibly, but warned it may take decisive countermeasures if threatened, while showing continued openness to diplomacy. The United States has rejected a simple extension of New START limits offered by Russia, but expressed interest in a better, modernized agreement including other nuclear states, notably China. Analysis from arms control experts highlights 2 principal concerns. 1. Removal of mutual limits may accelerate a new arms race, as both sides could increase deployed warheads and delivery platforms without legal obligations to constrain deployments. 2. Absence of inspections reduces transparency, making it harder to verify intentions and avert escalation in future crises. Political leaders in both capitals agree there is a need for renewed arms control discourse. However, divergent priorities, the U.S. insistence on broader inclusivity, including China, and Russian concerns about strategic imbalance, complicate prospects for a swift replacement treaty. Some analysts propose that emerging technologies, like satellite and AI-assisted monitoring systems, could supplement or partially replace traditional treaty verification mechanisms. These approaches aim to provide at least partial transparency absent formal inspection regimes, though they face technical and diplomatic hurdles. We turn now to Iran, which remains a focus of global nuclear stability concerns. Iran's main enrichment facilities, at Isfahan, Natanz, and Fordow, continue to show limited or inoperative activity since significant damage from military strikes in mid-2025. While visible enrichment appears halted, efforts to reconstruct infrastructure are underway, and restart timelines remain uncertain. Notably, Iran previously enriched uranium up to 60% U-235 purity, well above the 3.67% limit in the now-defunct Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and remains the only non-nuclear weapons state with such capability. In the past 2 weeks, indirect U.S.-Iran nuclear talks in Muscat, Oman have resumed, the first formal diplomatic engagement since June 2025. Both sides described the initial round as a good start, though core disagreements persist. At issue are Iran's long-term enrichment activities and related sanctions relief demands. Tehran insists that enrichment on Iranian soil must be recognized as a condition of any agreement, rejecting demands to halt enrichment entirely. Additional reporting indicates that Iran would consider diluting its 60% enriched uranium stockpile if all U.S. sanctions were lifted, a major concession, if actionable, but one linked to broad diplomatic and economic deliverables beyond nuclear activity alone. Iran's political landscape has also shifted. Domestic enforcement actions have targeted leading reformist politicians, reflecting internal unrest after widespread and deadly protests. Analysts link these actions to increased regime tightening even as nuclear negotiations proceed. Iran publicly asserts it will not be intimidated by U.S. military deployments in the Gulf and maintains its right to pursue enrichment. These developments complicate diplomatic traction as Tehran seeks sanctions relief and security assurances while maintaining equity in negotiations. Without a comprehensive deal in place, Iran's technical capability to resume enrichment rapidly remains a latent risk. Although no indications exist of an imminent breakout toward weapons-grade production, continued refinement of nuclear infrastructure, coupled with strategic political tensions, sustains international concern. The United States continues to set high diplomatic thresholds, including demands for curtailing both enrichment and ballistic missile development, tying these to sanctions relief. In addition to Russia and Iran, broader nuclear risk vectors deserve attention. U.S. officials have recently accused China of conducting secret nuclear tests, which China denies. These claims, associated with calls for broader arms control framework, highlight rising mistrust and potential normative erosion around nuclear test norms. These dynamics show a global nuclear architecture in flux, with legacy treaties expiring, rival powers contesting verification norms, and regional nuclear programs like Iran's defying easy diplomatic resolution. The DEFCON Warning System is a private intelligence organization which has monitored and assessed nuclear threats by national entities since 1984. It is not affiliated with any government agency and does not represent the alert status of any military branch. The public should make their own evaluations and not rely on the DEFCON warning system for any strategic planning. At all times, citizens are urged to learn what steps to take in the event of a nuclear attack. If this had been an actual attack, the DEFCON warning system will give radiation readings for areas that are reported to it. Your readings will vary. Official news sources will have radiation readings for your area. For immediate updates, visit www.defconwarningsystem.com. Breaking news and important information can be found on the DEFCON Warning System Community Forum and on the DEFCON Twitter feed DEFCON WS Alerts. You may also subscribe to the DEFCON Warning System mailing list. Note that Twitter updates may be subject to delays. The next scheduled update is 1 p.m., the 16th of February 2026. Additional updates will be made as the situation warrants, with more frequent updates at higher alert levels. This concludes this report of the DEFCON Warning System.